Hello, my name is Kate Jones, and this is my presentation for the case study for EDL 855. So, this case study focuses on an assistant principal named Richard Inman. Richard has been very focused on establishing a relationship with some of the rougher kids in his school, right? They come from the South Side. He's also from the South Side. So, he does have empathy for how these students have been brought up, and he wants to do his best to make sure that they are getting some extra attention. And James, who's the leader of this group, has been doing pretty well, right? They've been interacting. But then James is seen passing something to David, who's a smaller honors student. When he brings them into the office, um, David is reluctant to talk, and an officer winds up searching him, finding brass knuckles. As David is about to be arrested, James admits that he forced David into holding the weapon. Unfortunately, even though this shows moral growth from James, um, both boys are arrested because there's a zero tolerance policy within the district for having weapons on school property or in school property. So, because the officer witnessed this, he arrests both boys. Now, Richard does not believe that David should have to face the same degree of punishment as James. James admitted that he did this. He's done things like this before. He's been to the expulsion program within the district before. But he knows that this will really hurt David's future. He's already a strong academic student. He's a gifted musician, and he doesn't want to see him get dragged down. Because of this, Richard refuses to expel David. When he refuses to expel David, he faces an official reprimand from the district for it because he's going against district policy. The issues here are plentiful. There's a zero tolerance district policy that states having weapons on school grounds means arrest and expulsion. So that is a legal issue right here. Richard does not feel good about the fact that he had the officer present. He feels like he contributed to their arrest and could have approached it differently. Also, by refusing to fill out the paperwork and sending David into the district's disciplinary expulsion program, Richard himself risks an official reprimand. But Richard believes that by sending David into this program, he would be risking his future success. So really, the struggle here is legally, Richard is supposed to expel David, but ethically, he knows that that will hurt David's future, so he does not want to do it. Richard's trapped between following the rules of the district and doing the right thing for his student, which is, in my opinion, the single sentence issue here. So, looking at the facts themselves, the people involved, we have the AP Richard, we have James, who's the leader of the rough group and who is going into the expulsion program. We have David Ramos, who is an honor student. We have the police officer who escorted the boys to the office. We have Mrs. Ramos, who is very upset about the fact that her son has been arrested and that he faces this level of issue when it's clear that James was forcing him to hold them. We have the director of secondary education, who is threatening disciplinary action against the assistant principal. And not listed here, but in hindsight, we also have James's mom, who's like, I'm going to let him stay in jail for a little while. Maybe he'll learn his lesson. So we could see a clear difference between the parents here, someone who's used to a son having issues and someone who is not. The location is, or the places that we see mentioned in this. We have Rocket Junior High, right? We have, which is where Richard is the assistant principal. He mentions the south side of town, which seems to be a rough neighborhood with a tough group of kids. We have the AP office, and then we have the juvenile detention center that both boys are sent to, and the DAEP, or the Disciplinary Alternative Education Program for temporarily expelled students. So, what would happen is James and David would both have to go into the DAEP program, which Richard thinks is a very bad thing for David. Program, they're in a junior high school, about 900 students. What we know about this program is limited, except for the fact that there is a zero tolerance policy for weapons on school grounds, which would result in 45 days of the DAEP program. So, by prioritizing the information, we have to keep in mind that having DAEP on his record and participating in DAEP will likely have a negative effect on a student like David. We can consider the fact that just the fact that it's on the transcript would hurt his chances of getting into specialized schools. It would make him look like a disciplinary problem. But on a personal level, it could also just set him down a bad path. It could set him, he could be introduced to a more negative aspect or more negative students who are embracing kind of crime or embracing ignoring school rules that could negatively impact David in the school building. But by refusing to follow the district's policy, Richard is also putting his own career on the line. It's troubling, right? Because when we think about it, and for me personally, when I think about my own moral code, or my moral compass that we talked about in our last presentation, my moral compass is guided by family. What impact could this have on Richard's family if he does not have this job? So clearly, there is an issue here. Richard does not want to have to impact his own career. However, by following the district's policy, he's breaking his own code of ethics, and that could be a make or break situation as well. This means there's a conflict between legal and ethical decision making here. But things that I was wondering, has this been discussed with Richard's principal? He's the AP. What about other district leaders and the school board? Would an appeal help? The thing that could be frustrating about this is that the decision could have a large impact on David and Richard's futures, and Richard's own career. So, looking at possible options and possible consequences, right? So, first, by just staying the path that he already followed, refusing to send David to DAEP and refusing and receiving an official reprimand. I mean, Richard's placement in the district could be at risk. He's not really kind of going out of his way to make sure that something like this doesn't happen again. Another option, though, would still be refusing to send David, but also appealing to the school board and district about the negative impact of zero tolerance policies. Richard still could receive disciplinary action, but the board may decide to revisit the policy, and other people within the district could empathize with Richard's situation, and maybe he wouldn't get the disciplinary action. Some other things to consider would be send David to DAEP, be like, not my problem. This, I have to follow the rules. But we know that could hurt David's future. And this could also disillusion both Richard and David in the idea of ethical decision making. Other things would be considering appealing to the district and still sending him to DAEP, or just leaving this current position, being frustrated by the fact that he would have to do something like this. So maybe Richard's like, yeah, peace, I'm out of here. You're forcing me into doing something I don't want to do, so I'm out of here. I'm not going to try to make positive change. I'm just gone. And when we look at these, I used my little Chrissy Teigen. I don't know about that when it came to the first and the last one. Um, you have to do something about it. Ethically, the right thing to do is to um, refused to send David to DAEP, but in the process, also appeal to the people around you, appeal to the school board, appeal to the district, appeal to the principal, and also try to make a move against zero tolerance policies. Having a zero tolerance policy that puts students, it doesn't consider students' perspectives and students' needs is problematic, and really it needs to be addressed. So that's where we went. For me personally, even though it would hurt to possibly get in trouble for something like this, I would not fill out that paperwork and I would not send him to this program. And I would risk being written up for it. This is an opportunity for Richard to advocate for his students by petitioning to the school board. And while it could hurt Richard's record, it also, he would be able to respond to that record. He could put a note in that says, "This is why I did what I did, and I believe that I did the correct thing ethically." In implementing this, you could tell the director that he cannot agree to send David to this program. If he is still written up, placing a response to the write up and asking for it to be included in the file. This could state that certain zero tolerance policies do not take ethical decision making into consideration and could hurt students without context. You would want to inform the director that you'd like to discuss possible changes to zero tolerance policies. And in that process, if you really want to, petition the school board and the district and be prepared to defend yourself. Ask Mrs. Ramos to speak as well. I think it might be important to recognize that, yeah, David could have stood up to James, but what would have been the repercussions of that? Would he have been hurt? He's 12, right? We're not looking at someone who is a troublemaker. We're looking at someone who was afraid. Continue to reach out to James. Throughout this process, I keep putting James to the back, but the reality is, James did a good thing here. He made the correct ethical decision, and he shouldn't be forgotten about. Richard has been a really good role model for him. And if I were Richard, I would continue reaching out to James, even while he's in that other program, to let him know how proud of him you are for making the right decision and helping David. Um, if in the end Richard loses his job, I think this is unlikely, but he should still feel good about the fact that he advocated for his students and did the right thing. Honestly, do you want to work for a district that's going to minimize your concern for your students and your ethics? Probably not. I did my best to include all of these standards within the article, and thinking about this class and this case study in particular, um, I've really focused on the importance of my own integrity and ethical decision making, um, and trying to do the right things for my students. Post pandemic, I've realized how important my own mental health is, and I've implemented changes in my life to ensure that I'm okay. And I encourage my students to advocate for themselves as well. And I think that that's important. In this study, we see an AP who puts his own career on the line in order to do the right thing. And honestly, I hope I would make the same decision in the future. Thank you so much for everything in this class and all of the love and support.